Hi, everybody. Okay, so let's start again. Just a short meditation on the breath. So sit in your best meditation posture. Then bring your mind inside, away from external objects of distraction, mainly objects of the five senses. And once you've brought your mind inside, keep it away from internal distractions, mainly the discursive, chattering mind. And find your breath where it goes out and comes in through your nostrils. Okay, and then just generate a strong determination. Now I'm going to focus on my breath without allowing myself to become distracted by anything whatsoever. So think like that, and then put your mind on your breath and keep it there for as long as you can. So now let's generate positive motivation for this evening's session. And not just any motivation, but the highest positive motivation. That of bodhicitta, the determination to reach enlightenment in order to be able to enlighten all sentient beings. So think, the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. And reaching enlightenment depends upon completing the path to enlightenment. So this is a long path with many steps, many teachings to study, think about, and meditate on. Therefore, to make sure I make progress every day, I need to establish a regular daily practice. So therefore, I'm going to participate in this session on establishing a daily practice in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, so like that, just very briefly generate a bodhicitta motivation for this evening's session. So we've been last week we started looking at Lama Zopa Rinpoche's method to transform a suffering life into happiness, including enlightenment. So I think you've all been able to access the root text of that, which is on the Kurukulla website. So there's also a commentary on that teaching by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which is not on the website. We can send you the PDF of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's commentary if you're interested. So if you'd like to get that, if you could email Bob at bob@kurukulla.org, just ask for the commentary and I'll send it to Bob later and he can send it to you in the next day or two. bob@kurukulla.org. So this practice, a method of transforming suffering life into happiness, starts with a glance meditation, direct meditation on the Lam Rim, a short meditation written by Dorji Changlo Sanjimpa. And we spent a little time looking at just the first verse of that last week. Lama Zopa Rinpoche's introduction to this practice says, the method to transform a suffering life into happiness, including enlightenment, begins with Dorji Changlo Sanjimpa's short Lam Rim prayer. Then after that, the first verse of the 8 verses of thought transformation and a verse from a prayer in 70 stanzas by Arya Sura then show how to live your life for others. So this attitude is then elaborated with some verses taken from a guide to Bodhisattva's way of life by Shanti Deva. And this practice is followed by blessing the speech and several mantras that are beneficial to recite daily, such as the mantra for blessing the mala, the rosary. So that's just Rinpoche's brief description of the practice. My wish is that all of you do this most important practice for generating a Dharma motivation, and especially a bodhicitta motivation, when you open your eyes in the morning. As soon as you wake up, whether your sleep has been positive or negative, you should begin this practice. If you know it by heart, you can think it. If you don't know it by heart, you can read it. So this is how to begin your day, every day of your life, if you want to transform your mind into Dharma. It is for anyone who wants to make their life meaningful and useful, not only for themselves, but also for the numberless sentient beings, including every single animal, those living in the water that are the size of mountains, and those that can't be seen with the eyes, but only with a microscope. The worms living in the ground, the tiny insects living in the grass that jump when somebody walks on it, and those flying in the sky, as well as every human being, asura and sura. It motivates you to transform your life from now up to enlightenment, especially from now up to death, and especially for your life today, to become the cause of enlightenment for sentient beings. It's a most unbelievable plan. In short, the method to transform a suffering life into happiness contains the main motivation and goal for your whole life and for all your lives up to enlightenment. It is to be practiced forever. When you reach enlightenment, you can stop. Then you just have to teach it to others. So the preliminaries, if you want to, and you have the time, you can begin with either the 9-round breathing meditation. So we've done that before in some of the how to meditate modules, or a simple breathing meditation to calm your mind. So we've sort of done this. First, sit in the 7-point posture of Buddha Vairocana. So each one of the 7 points, so that's the cross legs and how to hold your arms and how to hold your hands, your shoulders, your eyes, your neck, your back, your lips, everything. All these 7 points of the Vairocana posture. Each one of the 7 points has a purpose, helping to support meditation and realization, and is related to the Lamrim in general and the 6 yogas of Naropa in particular. So the 6 yogas of Naropa are a fairly advanced practice from the Vajrayana. To do just a simple breathing meditation, so we won't do it again, we've just done a simple breathing meditation, but here as well as just focusing on the breath and trying to keep your mind concentrated like that, we had a very simple visualization. Breathe in slowly, then as you exhale, think that all the 3 poisonous minds, ignorance, attachment, aversion, the causes of suffering, leave in the form of black fog or smoke and go beyond this world. So when you breathe out, visualize the air that comes out is in the form of thick black smoke, and it contains all your delusions, your ignorance, attachment, aversion, negative karma, your physical illnesses, your spirit interferences, anything that hinders your life and your progress, in the form of thick black smoke, and it disappears, it goes across the horizon and disappears, dissolves into nothingness and no longer exists anywhere. So each time you breathe out, you visualize like that. As you slowly inhale, breathe in white light, thinking that you're breathing in all the qualities of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, Vajrapani, the Buddha of power. You're breathing in all their qualities, their enlightened qualities in the form of white light, radiant white light. And in doing so, you receive perfect wisdom and or understanding from Manjushri, infinite compassion from Chenrezig, and perfect power from Vajrapani. So they fill your whole body and your mind is transformed into these qualities. So sometimes we do that meditation, breathing in the white light and breathing out the black smoke. So that's kind of purifying ourselves and enriching ourselves with the enlightened qualities, the white light brings. And then sometimes when we're practicing compassion, we do it the other way around, sort of a Tonglen meditation. We're taking on the suffering of others and giving them all our virtue, happiness, and merit. So there, we breathe. When we breathe in, we visualize we're breathing in the black smoke, which is the three poisonous minds, all the delusions, the negative karma, sickness, and so forth of all sentient beings. We take it on ourselves, and then we breathe out the enlightened white. We breathe out the white, radiant white light, which is enlightened energy that we send to all sentient beings and transform their minds from ignorance to enlightenment. So that's a different kind of practice. But so normally if you're doing the morning practice as a warm-up meditation, we can do the simple one, breathing in the white light and breathing out the black smoke. So then Rinpoche explains that the introduction to the practice just about transforming our mind into the Dharma and bodhicitta. At the beginning of each day, after you open your eyes, until enlightenment is achieved, and until death, and especially today, so that all the activities of your body, speech, and mind, hearing, thinking, meditating, as well as walking, sitting, sleeping, doing your job, and so on, do not become causes of suffering and instead become causes of happiness, and especially that they become causes to achieve Buddhahood. That is, you transform them into a method for accomplishing benefit and happiness for all sentient beings. Here is a method for transforming the mind into the holy Dharma, and especially into bodhicitta. So this practice is a motivation for how to live your life in the Dharma, especially bodhicitta. In the morning, when you open your eyes, you should remember to transform your mind into Dharma. Into Dharma means into a cause that brings only happiness. You should understand that this is how to live your life in happiness. It's not about living your life with self-cherishing, in suffering and depression, thinking I'm hopeless. Instead, from the morning, you make your life most beneficial and meaningful for sentient beings with the motivation of a good heart, with the good heart of bodhicitta. This is then the basis for actualizing the Lamrim realizations and the meditations of the Tantric path. The reason that I'm pushing you to do this practice first thing in the morning is that this is what you need to do if you want to be happy and avoid depression and to make your life most beneficial for sentient beings, which means also for yourself. You should recite this motivation every day to lead your life in the most meaningful way for every sentient being, for every ant, every mosquito, every maggot, every fish, every animal, every human being, every sura and every asura in the numberless universes, and the wish to free them from suffering and cause them happiness. This motivation makes your life become a cause of happiness beyond this life, of liberation from the oceans of samsaric suffering and the state of omniscient mind. So this motivation brings us happiness in future lives, liberation from all of psychic existence, and full enlightenment of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. It's very important for your daily actions to not become causes of suffering, in particular the causes of the lower realms, and to become causes of happiness in future lives. If your mind is not paying attention to that, it doesn't matter if you meditate without moving for hours. If you don't check your motivation, your meditation becomes another cause of suffering, another cause of the lower realms. If you don't know the motivation of the lower capable being, which is the first Dharma, the very basic Dharma, and you don't meditate with that motivation, your whole life's meditation can become the cause of the lower realms. If you are meditating so that you can be happy or gain power or attain peace for yourself in this life, your meditation becomes another cause of the lower realms. Other people may think, oh, he meditates all the time. But if someone is meditating without knowing even the first Dharma, that the first Dharma, it means meditating or doing other actions in order to not be reborn in the lower realms, but to receive a better future life in cyclic existence as a human or as a god. So it's not seeking escape from cyclic existence, it's seeking rebirth in cyclic existence, but in the upper realms, which are the relatively happy realms compared to the lower realms. So if you don't know even the first Dharma, it becomes the cause of the lower realms, even though there might be some pleasant feeling of bliss or peace in your meditation. You know, feeling bliss and peace is all well and good, but that's not the point. And we mustn't get attached to that. Even though you meditate every day for many hours, it is meaningless if you don't do it with the proper motivation. In reality, it's very sad. If you don't know what Dharma is, you waste your whole life and also create causes of the lower realms. So, to know what Ribush means by all that, there's this book called How to Practice Dharma, which is exactly on this point, you know, the sort of negative motivation, worldly motivation to avoid, and the different kinds of positive motivation we should generate. So, How to Practice Dharma, this is teachings on the 8 worldly dharmas. So the 8 worldly dharmas are these different activities, sort of broad brush activities that describe how we waste our perfect human rebirth and don't practice Dharma, even if we think we're practicing Dharma. If we don't know this important point about motivation, then there's a strong chance that we're not doing it correctly. So if you don't know what Dharma is, you waste your whole life and also create causes of the lower realms. Meditating on this practice, this one we're talking about, makes your mind become Dharma. It transforms your mind from your present motivation of worldly concern or attachment to this life into a Dharma motivation unstained by that attachment. And it transforms your mind into the motivation of bodhicitta. When you do everything, including eating, walking, sitting, sleeping, and working with bodhicitta, all your actions become causes of enlightenment. In this way, although it might not be nice to say it like this, your previously kaka life, your previously shit life, is transformed into gold by transforming your mind into bodhicitta. So I think when Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche talk about pipi and kaka, I think they got those terms from their first Western student, Zena. So maybe that's what her parents. Maybe they're the words her parents used when she was a kid. I don't know. So when the lamas were learning English, that became what they called excrement, kaka and pipi. So we want our previously kaka life transformed into gold by transforming our mind into bodhicitta. So this Lamrim prayer, I don't know, do you have it in front of you, the Lamrim prayer? I could, well, anyway, if it's on, if you look on the Kurukulla homepage, there's a menu up the top right, I think it is, called Resources, and under Resources, there's Prayers and Practices, and among the prayers and practices, there's this one, the method to transform suffering life into happiness, and the Lamrim prayer is there near the beginning of the practice. So Rinpoche says that this prayer was composed by the great Lama Dorji Chung Losang Jinpa. Not sure who he was or when he lived, probably maybe 300 years ago in Tibet. It's short, yet it's very, very good as motivation for life. I received the oral transmission of it from Kyabji Geshe Senge Rinpoche. Geshe Senge, I met him in Tibet in 91, and then again, I think in 93. And he was the abbot of a small monastery within the Sera monastery. He's a Mongolian Lama. Geshe-la, Mongolian, and La Rampa Geshe, so highest rank of Geshe. He was appointed as abbot of both Sera Me and Sera Je in Lhasa after Mao Zedong died. So I met him in Tibet those couple of times. And then in the 90s, he came out of Tibet for a while, and he stayed in Dharamsala. And Lamas gave teachings to Westerners, and I think Lama Zopa Rinpoche received a number of transmissions from him. Rinpoche went to Tibet in 87 and 88, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So he might have also met Geshe Senge there. I didn't ask him for the oral transmission. Geshe-la from his own side gave it to me and said that it would be good for me to recite it. This is Lama Zopa speaking. When you do this prayer, think of your root guru, whether His Holiness the Dalai Lama or someone else, or else of the merit field to which you usually pray. When you make requests to the merit field, think that the holy beings in the merit field are all one. This is what you have to discover and realize, that they are all one. So all these different Buddhas we hear about, all these meditational deities, all our gurus, the Buddhas of the past, present, future, they're all manifestations of the omniscient mind. What Lama Zopa Rinpoche once called the Guru omniscient mind. So because every sentient being is different, and every sentient being's mind is different, so the enlightened mind manifests in different ways according to the karma of us sentient beings. So, my karma is different from yours, and so they manifest one way for me, another way to you, another way for somebody else. So it's like Alec Guinness in Kind Hearts and Coronets. Anybody seen that film? Alec Guinness. Remember Alec Guinness? I think he was Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first Star Wars. I think in Kind Hearts and Coronets, I think he had about 7 or 8. He played 7 or 8 different people. It was quite an interesting performance, male and female. So that was only 8 roles. The enlightened mind can play millions and billions and trillions of roles, play one for each sentient being, which are numberless. So anyway, we talked about this last week. Essence encompassing all the Buddhas, originator of the holy Dharma, scriptures and realization, principle of all the Aryas, intending virtue, in the glorious holy gurus, I take refuge. Then I think I spent an inordinate amount of time talking about rogue geshis. So we won't go into all that again. Anyway, Rinpoche's explanation of that verse: if you want to be free from samsara, you need to look for a guru. The continuity of the oceans of samsaric suffering, the three kinds of suffering: suffering of change, and pervasive compounding suffering, has no beginning. The ocean of samsaric suffering has no beginning, but if you want to end it, you need to look for a guru. And especially if you want to achieve enlightenment, to be able to free numberless sentient beings from the oceans of samsaric suffering and bring them to the peerless happiness of the state of omniscient mind, you need the root of the path to enlightenment, which is to correctly devote yourself to the virtuous friend, the guru, spiritual teacher. Therefore, you need a guru, and you need to do guru yoga practice. In the 50 verses of Guru Devotion, which is a tantric text on Guru Devotion, there's this text called The Fulfillment of All Hopes, is Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on the 50 verses of Guru Devotion. So the 50 verses of Guru Devotion is from the Vajrayana, so it's not really meant for beginners. But still, it's good to read and understand. Also, there are a couple of commentaries on 50 verses of Guru Devotion by Geshe Ngawang Dage, a short one and a long one, commentaries, at lamayeshi.com. So if you went to our website, lamayeshi.com, and you search for 50 verses of Guru Devotion, you'll find those 2 teachings by Geshe Ngawang Dage, who was the first teacher in Dharamsala, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. And the root text is included in the longer commentary. So verse 47 says, Vajradhara himself said, realization follows after the master. By knowing that, please the Guru's holy mind with everything you do. So abandon anything that is displeasing to the teacher. The general and sublime realizations will then be granted in just this life. Realization follows after the master means realization depends on correctly devoting yourself to the Vajra master, to the Guru. So the term Vajra master is applied to a Vajrayana teacher Tantra, who gives empowerments and tantric vows and commentaries and oral transmissions of the tantric texts. So Rinpoche says, first you check the guru, then when you've found a qualified guru, you correctly devote yourself to them, thus causing realizations to come. Sublime realization means enlightenment. Whether or not you look for a guru and then correctly devote yourself to him depends on your motivation, on what you want to use your life for. You need the route of the path to enlightenment, correct devotion to the virtuous friend, especially if your motivation is the wish to achieve Sangye. Sangye is a Tibetan word for Buddha. Sang means fully purified, and Gye means fully realized or fully developed. So that describes the enlightened mind. Sang, fully purified of gross and subtle obscurations, and Gye means fully, replete with all realizations of the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, right view of emptiness, and of the two stages of Tantra, the generation stage and the completion stage. Especially if your motivation is the wish to achieve Sangye, you need a guru, so that you can free the numberless sentient beings from the oceans of samsaric suffering and bring them to enlightenment, the peerless happiness of the state of omniscient mind. So then the root text goes on. Please, gurus, bless my mind to become Dharma, Dharma to become the path, and the path to be without obstacles. So these three lines contain the whole Lam Rim, the whole stages of the path to enlightenment. The first line contains the graduated path of the lower capable being. Please, gurus, bless my mind to become Dharma. The second line contains the graduated path of the middle capable being, Dharma to become the path. And the last line, and the path to be without obstacles, refers to the graduated path of the higher capable being, both Sutra and Tantra paths. So I think you're familiar with these three levels of the path: the lower capable being, middle capable being, and the great capable being. This is literal translation of the Tibetan term for these three levels of being or three levels of motivation. So put into more standard English, you could say, sometimes they translate it as the three scopes: the lower scope, the middle scope, and the great scope. You might have heard that. Rinpoche doesn't really like that translation. He says lower capable being, middle capable being, and great capable being. I don't like that English, so I would say the being of lowest, the practitioner of least capability, the practitioner of intermediate capability, and the practitioner of great capability or capacity. So the first one I mentioned before, if our motivation is simply to not be reborn in the lower realms and to do a practice in order to get a better life in cyclic existence, that's the lower capable being. To achieve that result, you have to practice Dharma, but it's the lowest level of Dharmic result, not being born in the lower realms. And it's not considered a particularly great achievement because you're still in cyclic existence like we are now, and there's still a lot of things can go wrong, there's still a lot of suffering, and the chances are that when that life dies, instead of continuing to be reborn in the upper realms, you'll be again reborn in the lower realms, having used up a lot of positive karma. and kind of have to wait for our positive karma to sort of throw us back into the upper realms, which happens very rarely. So it's better to have the intermediate level of motivation, or the motivation of the middle capable being, the practitioner of intermediate capability, and that is to escape from cyclic existence altogether. So with that, we attain individual liberation, but it really only benefits one person, the practitioner who liberates himself or herself, and doesn't really benefit other sentient beings much or hardly at all. But because we rely on the kindness of sentient beings to practice any kind of Dharma at all, including, the Dharma practice that takes us out of cyclic existence, sentient beings have been extremely kind. So it's very kind of selfish and cruel just to look for our own happiness, our own liberation from suffering, and forget about them and just leave them to their own devices. So from the Mahayana point of view, that's that intermediate level of motivation is also quite inferior. And what we need to be is a great capable being, or a practitioner of greatest capability, and that is to practice bodhicitta in order to reach enlightenment, so that we can enlighten all sentient beings. And whether we achieve enlightenment slowly by following the sutra path, or whether we achieve it quickly by following the tantric path, Vajrayana, we're a practitioner of greatest capability. So there was this Theravada monk I used to know years ago. He was English, but he lived in Thailand for a long time, and I forget who his teachers were. Well, I don't think it was Ajahn Chah, who was famous. Ajahn Chah was a famous Thai forest monk. This monk's name was Kantipalo, Lawrence Mills. It's his English name, Pra Kantipalo. Pra means like venerable or something like that. Pra Kantipalo. And so he finished up in Australia, and he established a little forest monastery outside of Sydney called Wat Buddha Dharma. And so, he stayed there with with his students and some families. Wat W-A-T is the Thai for temple or monastery. Wat Buddha Dharma. Some of the people who lived there used to call it What Bloody Drama, because it was a Dharma center. So I guess there was Wat Buddha Dharma, there was all kinds of bloody drama going on there too. So anyway, Lawrence Mills. So I met him in 75, I think, the first time, when I was traveling with Lama Yeshe Lama Zopa, and he came to, he dropped in the meditation course that Lamas were giving in Queensland. And that was the second course they'd given. The first course they gave in Australia was in 1974. And he came to that course for a couple of days, I think. He had some students who lived nearby, a German couple, and the woman, Ilse Lederman, became his student, and then later she became quite a famous nun called Aya Kema. She wrote some books. We published her first book at Wisdom Publications that was called Being Nobody, Going Nowhere. Then I think she published a book with Shambhala and and then she ran some Dharma center in Australia. So, but before she got involved, before she became a nun, she and her husband had this organic farm in Queensland, and they heard about these Tibetan lamas, so they came down to check them out. And then Prakati Palo went to some of Lama Zopa's teachings. Lama Zopa, as usual, was the main teacher. And then he went to Lama Yeshe and complained to Lama Yeshe. Said, this young Lama, he talks too much about bodhicitta, because this wasn't, bodhicitta wasn't given such great emphasis in Thai Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism. And so I don't know what Lama Yeshe told him, but he registered the complaint. Anyway, he told me about it later, Lama Yeshe. So that was like in the mid-70s. So then I didn't see him for a long time. And so in the mid-70s, I was living in Nepal, and then I lived in India for 6 years. Then I went to London for 6 years, and then I came here when we moved Wisdom Publications from London to Boston in '89. And I was staying, I hadn't been here very long, just a few months, and I was staying with friends in Brookline. And I got a call in my office at Wisdom, and it was this guy, Kantipalo, on the phone. And he said, he said, oh, I don't know if you remember me. This is Kantipalo. Of course I remembered him. He was quite well known. Anyway, and he said, well, you'll never believe what's happened. And I was like, try me. And he said, I've just been in New Hampshire with Namkhai Norbu. So I don't know if you know who Chogyal Namkhai Norbu is. He was a Tibetan Lama who I think was based in Italy towards the end, a big Dzogchen Nyingma master teaching Dzogchen, Tibetan Buddhism. So Kantipalo had disrobed after, and he was very, very strict when he was a Theravadan monk. He was very gaunt, followed the vows very strictly, didn't eat in the evenings, did a lot of meditation. But now he disrobed and he'd gotten into Tibetan Buddhism, and he needed a place to crash in Boston overnight. So he came and stayed the night where I was staying. And, we talked, and then he went back to Australia. And then he started a Dharma center. And it was called the Bodhicitta Center. So 20 years on, after complaining to Lama Yeshe that Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught too much about bodhicitta, here he is. He's starting a center in northern Queensland called Bodhicitta Center. I heard a few years ago he developed dementia, so now he's in some kind of place where, like a nursing home or some place where people with dementia go. Anyway, sorry. So so he was lucky, even though he created the karma of criticizing bodhicitta, he nevertheless was able to take it on and almost identify with it. So these three lines encapsulate the whole Lam Rim. The first Panchen Lama's commentary on Lama Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment mentions 4 capable beings. So the ordinary capable beings, so that's That's the one who thinks only of this life, nothing else. And they live their life with just the 8 worldly dharmas and attachment to this life. And in regards to their motivation, just trying to benefit this life alone, they're no different from an animal. Even though they have a human body, millionaires can live their lives in exactly the same way as ants, maggots, fleas, or worms, in that they work only for this life, to have happiness and be free from problems right now. So no matter how different their lives may look from the outside, their attitude, their motivation is exactly the same. That is the ordinary capable being who is not a Dharma practitioner. Even though some of them may look religious with shaved heads in their way of acting and dressing, in reality, they are not spiritual people. The lower capable being, so that's the first level, has no attachment to this life, has renounced the 8 worldly dharmas. They wish to not be reborn in the lower realms, and they seek a higher rebirth as a deva, as a god, or human being, especially a perfect human rebirth. For that, they then take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and protect their karma. So of the 3 special capable beings, they are the lowest capable being. So that's the bottom line of practicing Dharma. You have to be motivated by seeking results of your actions in a future life, not be doing things for this life. The middle capable being looks for liberation from the oceans of samsaric suffering. With that aim, they practice the 3 higher trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. That's the graduated path of the middle capable being. So that's the line that says Dharma to become the path. And the higher capable being seeks enlightenment. With bodhicitta, they practice the 6 perfections and so forth. That's the graduated path of the higher capable being. So the graduated path of the 3 capable beings is the essence of the whole Buddha Dharma, both Sutra and Tantra. It is the essence of what the Buddha taught, the more than 100 volumes of the Kangyur. So the Kangyur is the Sutra teachings, the direct teachings given by the Buddha. There's, I think, 108 volumes, usually they say. And the essence of what the pundits and yogis, such as Nagarjuna, Asanga, Saraha, Krishnacharya, Tilopa, Naropa taught. More than 200 volumes of the Tengyur. There's, well, it depends on, there are 3 famous sets of Tengyur. The Tengyur is the commentaries by the great Indian scholars, like Rinpoche just mentioned, Nagarjuna and so forth, on the Buddha's teachings. So depending on which set it comes from, there's 225 or 227 volumes, something like that. These are huge texts. So there's one from Dege, which I think is in Eastern Tibet, and there's one from Natang. So I think that might be somewhere from Sakya, Natang, Dege, and Cherne, something. There are 3 different Tengyur, depending on which monastery they were printed at. So to print these texts is not a small thing. You know, it's not like, you know, pressing print on your computer. These texts were printed by hand from wood blocks. So each page, you know, 4, 5, 6, 700 pages in each volume. So each one was a wood block, and those were all carved by hand. I mean, it's an incredible undertaking. So just to store the wood blocks would have taken a lot of space. And of course, when the uprising, the 1959 Tibetan uprising against Chinese occupation failed, and the Chinese really took over. Then they burnt all these wood blocks, or they they made people use them in building roads so that people would have to walk on top of them and drive over them, and they made people use them like build toilets out of them, and they made people use the texts as toilet paper. I mean, and if you understand, Tibetan attitude towards texts and the wood blocks that they come from, it's like unthinkable. Cruelty to make people do this. Anyway, so the Lamrim contains the essence of these two collections of the Tibetan canon. So there's the Kangyur, the spoken word of the Buddha, and the Tengyur, the 200 and something volumes of the Indian masters' commentaries. And then, of course, on top of that, there's all the indigenous Tibetan texts, every famous Lama wrote so many texts. Lama Tsongkhapa, he wrote 18 texts, and then his two disciples, Gyaltsab Je and Khedrup Je, wrote another 20 volumes between them. So the collection of Lama Tsongkhapa and his two main disciples is 38 volumes, big ones. But anyway, there are so many indigenous Tibetan texts. So there's just so much Dharma was available in Tibet. So all these teachings are divided into three levels: the Hinayana Teachings, the Paramitayana Teachings, which are the Mahayana Sutra, and the secret mantra Vajrayana Teachings, which are Mahayana Tantra. So the lesser vehicle, the Hinayana, leads to individual liberation, and the Mahayana leads to full enlightenment. And there are these two Mahayana paths: the Mahayana Sutra, which is the gradual path, the slow path, takes 3 countless great eons to get to enlightenment, or there's the Vajrayana path, which can bring the practitioner to enlightenment much more quickly, even in one lifetime. So all these teachings divide into those 3 levels, and all those teachings are contained in the Lamrim, the graduated path of the 3 capable beings. So then the next verse says, until I achieve Buddhahood, please bless me to be like the youthful Norsang and the Bodhisattva always crying, incorrectly following the virtuous friend with pure thought and action, seeing whatever is done as pure and accomplishing whatever is said and advised. I lost my place. So from the Lamrim outline, that that's the section, how to correctly follow the virtuous friend, which is the root of the path. So Rinpoche says, the Sutra of the Fortunate Eon, it's the name of the sutra, the Sutra of the Fortunate Eon tells the stories of the Indian bodhisattvas, youthful Norsang, and always crying. I was just trying to find out more about youthful Norsang, Shonu Norsang, but I really couldn't find much. So I have to do some more research. But Google wasn't any help. But always crying was Sada Prarudita. His story is told in quite some detail towards the end of the Perfection of Wisdom the Sutra of the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines, just about how he begged his teacher for teachings and how he had to wait for his teacher to finish retreat, and then how when he was going to give teachings, the area was very dusty and he couldn't find any water to settle the dust. So he cut his arm and used the blood to settle the dust so that his teacher wouldn't get dusty when he was teaching. Anyway, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. As I think you know, this book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, The Heart of the Path, this is Rinpoche's extensive teachings on Guru devotion. So this is by far the most complete book on Guru devotion in Tibetan Buddhism that's available. And so, of course, highly recommended. So this next commentary talks about the practice of Guru devotion and so on and so forth. So I won't spend more time on that right now. So I don't know what I keep doing, but I'm just doing this on the iPad and it just keeps zipping up to pages all over the place, not where I want to be. So one point Rinpoche does make, in my view, many Westerners don't understand how important this practice of Guru devotion is. Even though they are good at talking about Dharma, about bodhicitta and many other things, it is often difficult for them to speak about this section of the Lamrim teachings. Either they don't know the subject of Guru devotion well and so are not strong in its practice, or else they don't like this subject. Because they don't understand it and don't see the logic in it, they think it's a fairy tale, like a story that a mother makes up when she puts her baby to bed. If this is the case, there will be a lot of blockage to the development of their mind. For this reason, His Holiness says that beginners should study with a teacher for 2 or 3 years, and only after that should they decide whether or not to devote themselves to that person as a guru. In other words, you shouldn't take a teacher as a guru immediately, but first examine them by studying with them as if you're attending a university or a college. Then, if you think you can devote yourself to them as a guru, you can make this decision. His Holiness advises people to be careful so that later on they don't end up with a big problem in their devotion to their guru, which destroys their enlightenment, their liberation, and the happiness of their future lives. So what he's saying here is, if you decide to enter a guru-disciple relationship with a spiritual teacher, once you've made that decision, you can't change your mind. You can't go back, because when you make that decision, and according to the tantric teachings, which is where this is coming from, you've accepted that teacher is a Buddha. So if you accepted that teacher is a Buddha or an enlightened being, then the teacher can make no mistakes. So if no matter what the teacher does, how weird he behaves or what strange teachings he gives or anything, you can't turn your back on that teacher. You can't renounce that teacher. Otherwise, you're creating the karma not only to be reborn in the lower realms, but to not meet a teacher for an inconceivably long period of time. So it's very important not to establish a guru-disciple relationship unless you're sure about that teacher. So if you read the teachings on guru devotion, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche's Heart of the Path, or Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on 50 verses of guru devotion, or the section on guru devotion in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, or in Great Lam Rim, Lama Tsongkhapa, Lam Rim Chenmo, you'll see they're all saying the same thing. But it's that's not how we're taught to regard a teacher in the West, like a school teacher or a university professor and so on. So it's a very, very different kind of relationship. So if you make that decision and create a guru-disciple relationship, either in your mind or even you go to your teacher and the teacher accepts you as a student and sort of affirms that you've now got this connection, Dharma connection, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche sometimes calls it. If you've established that, and then the teacher starts doing strange things that you hadn't been aware of before, or teaching things that you don't think really the Buddha taught or isn't Buddhism, you don't have to stay with the teacher. But what you can't do is renounce the teacher from your heart, or say, okay, I made a mistake. Now, he's not my guru after all. Can't do that without incurring this really heavy negative karma. Anyway, I talked about that last time, and when there was a dispute between two lamas and students were forced to make a decision to go with one or the other, then the one they didn't go with, they should still view as a Buddha, but whose actions are kind of unfathomable to me at the moment. I don't understand what his actions, but I'm not renouncing that person as not a Buddha. And I think I mentioned on Lama Zopa Rinpoche's online advice book at lamayeshi.com, then he gives advice to people who had to stop studying with a teacher who they've taken as a guru. So how to think. So you can find those instructions there. So His Holiness advises to be careful so that later on you don't end up with a big problem. And also, if you do renounce your guru from your heart, then in every second they create the heaviest negative karma to suffer for many eons in hell, where it's difficult to even hear a human voice. Like this, they also create the cause for it to be difficult to find a guru for eons. So again, this this form of practice of guru, this form of guru devotion, and seeing the guru as Buddha, it comes from Vajrayana Buddhism, and they say there are two of the hardest things to understand in Buddhism. Two of the hardest things to realize is karma, how karma works, to actually see how karma works. And really only an enlightened being can see the finest or most intricate working of karma. It's easier to understand emptiness, to realize emptiness, than it is to realize how karma works. And I mean, you can understand theoretically, but to have a realization. And the other is to see the guru as a Buddha. So these are two very, very hard things to realize. And this level of guru devotion, seeing the guru as Buddha and so forth, really isn't taught in the Hinayana or in the Mahayana Sutra teachings. So anyway, these classes, these Monday nights, are sort of supposed to be introductory, so not really supposed to talk about this highest yoga tantra stuff, but we all like advanced teachings. So then this Lamrim prayer goes on. Please bless me to see that this greatly meaningful body with freedoms and richnesses is difficult to find and easily perishes, that action and result are so profound, and that the sufferings of the evil, gone, transmigratory beings are so difficult to bear. Therefore, so this sounds quite a bit like Lama Tsongkhapa in Foundation of All Good Qualities. Therefore, please bless me to take refuge from the depths of my heart in the three rare sublime ones, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, to abandon negative karma and to accomplish virtue according to the Dharma. So this is the graduated path of the lower capable being. So I think in the past, we've talked a lot about perfect human rebirth, the 8 freedoms and the 10 richnesses. As usual, we have a book for that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche's extensive teachings on the perfect human rebirth. So again, this is the most extensive teaching on this topic that you'll find. And it's been distilled from nearly 40 years of teachings on the topic that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has been giving. So, and in Rinpoche's Lam Rim courses, especially the early ones, he spent most of the time talking about this level of the path, the graduated path of the lower capable being. So even though Rinpoche spent most of his teachings talking about, the perfect human rebirth, impermanence and death, three lower realms, refuge and karma. So those are the main topics of the lower capable being path. Why was Kantipalo complaining that he talks too much about bodhicitta? Because bodhicitta doesn't come into this lower level of the path. But the way Rinpoche would teach is in the first discourse of the day, usually the morning session, he'd come at 9. he would quote a verse from either Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, I think mainly the first chapter, where it talks about the benefits of bodhicitta, or I don't know if I have it here. There's a book called you've probably heard of Kurukulla Rinpoche. Remember we talked last year, when we did one of the modules, we talked about Lama Tsongkhapa's Foundation of All Good Qualities, and I used the commentary that we received from Kurukulla Rinpoche back in Nepal in '75. We went through his commentary on that short Lamrim text, Foundation of All Good Qualities by Lama Tsongkhapa. So Kurukulla Rinpoche, and I told his story at that time, he was His Holiness the Dalai Lama's bodhicitta teacher. So if you can imagine teaching bodhicitta to Chenrezig, it's got to be pretty qualified to do that. Well, anyway, he gave His Holiness teachings on Bodhicharyavatara, on Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And he wrote a text. It was almost a bodhicitta thought for the day, for a year, except it was a few verses short. I think it was 335 verses, something like that. So so Rinpoche would begin the morning discourse by quoting either a verse from Shantideva or a verse from Kurukulla, from this book called that he wrote called The Precious Lamp, Verses in Praise of Bodhicitta. So that was translated in English as vast as the heavens, deep as the sea. So I guess that's a quote from one of the verses, where he's describing what bodhicitta is. It's vast as the heavens and deep as the sea. It's vast because it encompasses all sentient beings, and it's profound because it's permeated by the wisdom of emptiness. So, or it's, we talk about relative, conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. So ultimate bodhicitta is the realization of emptiness with the bodhicitta motivation. And conventional bodhicitta is the practice of bodhicitta in practice, like, practicing the six perfections: generosity, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. So, so Rinpoche would quote one of these, a verse from Shantideva or Kurukulla, and then he would give an explanation of the verse, like a little commentary on the verse, and then use that as the bodhicitta motivation. So then we'd all generate bodhicitta on the basis of that explanation of what bodhicitta is and how beneficial a thought it is. So that's how Rinpoche began every day, by extolling the virtues of bodhicitta. So in those days, he talked a lot about bodhicitta in that way. Then he talked a lot about suffering, and he didn't talk that much about emptiness in the early days. But then in the late 70s, and then after the 80s, then Rinpoche taught and still teaches a lot on emptiness. So when we put these books together like this, the Lamrim teachings, we rely mainly on Rinpoche's early teachings, because that's when he spent most time explaining these topics. So now 2 or 3 years ago, we made this arrangement with Wisdom Publications that they would continue publishing Rinpoche's Lam-Rim teachings. So in the last couple of years, they've published a book called Bodhicitta, Rinpoche's teachings on Bodhicitta, and they published a book on the 6 perfections, which I just mentioned. So Rinpoche's teachings on the 6 perfections, and they put out another book specially on patience, the 4th perfection, which Shantideva deals with in his Bodhicharyavatara, the 6th chapter. So Rinpoche has taught a lot on that, and enough to publish a book. So Wisdom have published those 3 books, and I think Shambhala or Snowline. Shambhala took over Snowline. They bought Snowline a few years ago. So those are the 3 main Dharma publishing houses: the Shambhala, Snowline, and Wisdom. So now Shambhala and Snowline are combined, and they published His Holiness the Dalai Lama's commentary on the 6th chapter. I think it's called Healing Anger. His Holiness's commentary on 6th chapter of the Bodhicharyavatara.
Hi, I had a question.
Sure.
So what is really the main reason that some like Theravada monks, and the one you were talking about before, kind of poo-pooed the idea of teaching bodhicitta so often? Did they see it as like too lofty or kind of like corruptible an idea for novices to grasp, or just in general they didn't think it was as important to the practice even for even more advanced practitioners?
Well, I think they rely mostly on the Pali Canon, and their goal is to attain nirvana or individual liberation. So you don't really need bodhicitta for that. And they practice, as Ribush mentioned, the 3 higher trainings of discipline or morality, concentration, and wisdom. So again, you don't need bodhicitta for that. And there's this idea that the Mahayana teachings are not really the teachings of the Buddha, that they were sort of created later by Nagarjuna and some of these other Indian scholars later on, hundreds of years after the Buddha passed away. And they don't accept the Mahayana scriptures as valid. This is the traditional understanding, what I get. So people like Antipalo, who encountered Buddhism in Thailand or Sri Lanka, they were the main places back then in the 60s and 70s. Southeast Asia was kind of a war zone, so they didn't, so they weren't sort of going to Laos or Cambodia to study. So mainly Thailand, and Burma was another place, but that was fairly closed. But still, people studied there with Mahasi Sayadaw and some other, Goenka, the famous Vipassana teacher. I don't know if you've heard of S.N. Goenka. He was all the rage for people back in the 70s. So these people like Joseph Goldstein, Jack Cornfield, Sharon Salzberg, John Kabat-Zinn. They studied and practiced in the so-called Vipassana, or insight tradition, and the teachers there were Ajahn Chah in his forest monastery in Thailand. Then there was another famous Thai teacher who taught Westerners, Buddha Dasa. He was in the south of Thailand. And then in Burma, there was, I think Mahasi side, or there were a couple of others, I can't remember their names. But Goenka, who was an Indian who'd studied with Burmese masters, he became the big Vipassana teacher. He used to do these famous 10-day Vipassana courses, which were very strict. And people liked going to those. But he had this rule that if you were a student of Tibetan Buddhism and you wanted to do his 10-day course, you weren't allowed to do your Tibetan sadhanas, or you weren't allowed to recite mantras. He considered that a distraction. So this caused a few Western students to agonize what they should do. Should they just keep doing their mantras that they promised to do every day in secret, or should they not? Anyway, it was drama. So anyway, those very traditional Theravada teachers or Hinayana teachers, the story is that, the Hinayana is not what the people who practice that vehicle call it, because it translates as the low vehicle or the lesser vehicle. So nobody wants to be low or lesser, and they regard it as pejorative. Geshe Ngawandage, there's a book called The Tibetan Tradition of Mental Development, and there Geshe Dage gives 6 reasons why Mahayana is great and Hinayana is not so great. I can't remember them, look them up though. But one reason is that, the result is great. Enlightenment is a much greater result than nirvana or liberation. Another great is that the benefit of the Mahayana is all sentient beings, whereas the main benefit from the Hinayana is one sentient being, oneself. Anyway, there are other reasons I can't remember now. But the story is that after the Buddha passed away, his followers sort of argued amongst themselves, and they finished up splitting into 18 schools, 18 Buddhist schools, which were all considered Hinayana schools. And of those 18, one of them was called the Theravada, the doctrine of the elders. And the way the story goes is that that's the only one of the 18 that survives to this day, so that when people who don't like to say Hinayana, they call it Theravada. And that perhaps accurately describes the school as it is now. And I don't know what the differences in philosophy were between these 18 different schools, how there could even be 18 different schools, I don't know. But so sometimes the word Theravada is used instead of Hinayana. Anyway, whatever you call it, they never taught bodhicitta much and never emphasized it. And they considered the Mahayana teachings with the Bodhisattva path and these, Nagarjuna's, the Madhyamaka teachings on emptiness. See, there are 4 schools of Buddhist philosophy. I don't know if anyone studied tenets with Geshe Tenley. You studied tenets, Bob? Anyone for tenets?
No,
There
but
are-
we can talk about the different schools and some of them.
Yeah, so there are two Hinayana schools, the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika, and there are two Mahayana schools, the Chittamatra and the Madhyamaka. And then Madhyamaka there is further divided into two, Svatantrika Madhyamika and Prasangika Madhyamika. So the Prasangika view is considered the highest view of emptiness, the most refined view of emptiness. And so the differences between those four schools, they're different philosophical beliefs, mainly how they see the self and the object of the objectification, what the gagcha, the object of refutation, what it is that things are empty of, what you have to refute the existence of to prove something is empty when we talk about emptiness. So the differences between those four levels of school is very clear. But and so the difference between the two Hinayana schools, Sautrantika, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, is clear. But the difference between between those two and the other 16, I've no idea. And I don't know if anybody knows. I've never seen these 18 schools described in detail. I'm sure they're somewhere, but we don't really study it that much. Okay, Trey? So, so Kantipala wouldn't have heard many teachings on bodhicitta. So to see this young Lama going on and on about bodhicitta was more than he could take. But it caught up with him. Okay, so so the graduated path of the lower capable being. So Rinpoche describes that. So if you want this commentary with all these details, remember you just email Bob at kurukulla.org and then he'll send it to you. So the next verse is the graduated path of the middle capable being. In dependence upon that, even if I achieve the mere higher rebirth of a deva or a human, by following the lower path, I will still have to experience suffering endlessly in samsara because of not having abandoned and being under the control of the disturbing thought obscurations. So generally we talk about delusions. If you kind of want to amplify it, Rinpoche calls it disturbing thought obscurations. They cloud our mind and they disturb our mind. Therefore, please bless me to reflect well upon the way of circling in samsara and continuously follow day and night the path of the three types of precious trainings, the principal method for becoming free from samsara. So here in the middle capable being, we study the Four Noble Truths that really explain in depth how cyclic existence works, and the 12 links of dependent origination, which shows how we get reborn in samsara and how we just perpetuate. Instead of getting out, we get further and further in. So that's the middle capable. And then the highest one is the great capable being. In dependence upon that, even if I achieve mere liberation, since there is no sentient being of the six types who has not been my father and mother, please bless me to think I must fulfill their purpose and turn away from the lower happiness of nirvana. Then please bless me to generate precious bodhicitta by equalizing and exchanging myself with others, and to follow the conduct of the conquerors, sons, the six paramitas, and so forth. This is the common graduate path, the great capable being. having trained my mind in the common path in that way, I will not be upset, even if I have to experience the sufferings of samsara for a long time. However, please bless me to look at sentient beings with extraordinary, unbearable compassion and to enter the quick path of the Vajrayana teachings. So the Mahayana Sutra path takes, 3 countless great eons, a really long time to reach enlightenment. And the Vajrayana we can reach much, 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 much more quickly, but we have to have extraordinary, unbearable compassion. It's inconceivable that I could wait 3 countless great eons before I can really help sentient beings by being enlightened. I must achieve enlightenment more quickly. Isn't there a quicker way? So for people who had this extraordinary, unbearable compassion and were very skilled meditators, then for people like that, the Buddha explained this Vajrayana path. So having trained my mind in the common path, so the common path is those 3 levels. Bless me to enter the quick path of the Vajrayana teachings. Then bless me to protect my vows and samayas. So when we enter the tantric path and we take initiation, and we're practicing, highest yoga tantra, then we take during the empowerment, the Vajra master gives us tantric vows. Actually, it also gives the bodhisattva vows, although we would have taken those before. In a highest yoga tantra initiation, the bodhisattva vows are given again and the tantric vows are given. And not only are we given vows that we have to keep scrupulously, but also we may be given a samaya commitment, like you have to practice, you have to recite, 108 Amani Padme Hum every day, or you have to practice the sadhana of Yamantaka or whatever deity. So the guru may give a daily commitment. So if we receive initiation, we make those commitments, those vows, commitments, we have to keep them. So please bless me to protect my vows and sabayas more than my life. And to quickly accomplish the unified Vajradhara state in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. So the unified state is the unification of method and wisdom. So for a non-enlightened being, method and wisdom aren't completely combined in the one as one mind, and the enlightened being sees ultimate reality and conventional reality together simultaneously at the same time. Even a highest level bodhisattva can't do that. Even a higher bodhisattva, when the bodhisattva meditates on emptiness, the mind is fully absorbed in the understanding and realization of emptiness. But in between the meditation sessions, because of the beginningless imprints of functioning under the delusions, in all those beginningless lives in cyclic existence, in between sessions, even when looking around, the imprints of the delusions are still there, and it still causes, still sees a conventional reality separate from the ultimate reality. So it's only an enlightened being where the mind realizing emptiness and the mind realizing conventional reality are joined in the one mind, one consciousness. So then there's a couple more verses here that Rinpoche says he added, but they're not in the original text by Dorji Chung Losang Jinpa. So when we recite these verses, then we meditate on the Guru entering our heart. So may I not give rise to heresy for even a second in regard to the actions of the glorious Guru. May I see whatever actions are done as pure. With this devotion, may I receive the Guru's blessings in my heart. So this word heresy has a lot of Christian connotations, I think. And we've been trying for nearly 50 years to convince Lama Zopa Rinpoche not to use that word, but he's still using it. So, so we have to understand what it means. It simply means wrong view. You know, views contrary to reality. There's no past and future lives. There's no such thing as karma. There's no Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, refuge. You know, all these fundamental teachings. That there's, and you know, if we have that wrong view strongly, then that's one of the mental factors that destroys merit. That's why when we create merit, we have to dedicate it to protect it from being destroyed by wrong views that might creep up or from anger. And in terms of this, in terms of relating this verse to the Guru, and the heresy or the wrong view is to see that the Guru is not Buddha. So having made the Dharma connection, and which depends on understanding that the Guru is a Buddha, is an enlightened being manifested in that form, and His Holiness calls it showing ordinary aspect. So the ordinary aspect means appearing as a person, as an ordinary person with faults and you know, mistaken actions and so on. So the idea there is that even though the Guru is a Buddha and ultimately perfect, he'll show mistaken actions so that we can relate more easily to that person as a human being. And but we need to see these mistaken appearances as skillful means, as being done intentionally with a purpose. You know, there was one time mainly in the 80s, going into the 90s, that whenever Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught, he would always be clearing his throat and always coughing. And when he's giving teachings, if you went to see him in his room or had a private interview or something, you know, or even just walking around with him, he wasn't always clearing his throat. He wasn't always coughing. And I remember one time I was in Melbourne, and he was giving a 3-day teaching, and there were too many people coming for the teaching to be held at the Dharma Centre, which was fairly small at that time in Melbourne, Tara House. And so students rented this gym at a nearby high school and set it up with the altar and tankas everywhere and everything, you know, and all the chairs. And then the first night Rinpoche came and he gave a teaching. There were about 120 people there. The place was quite full. But, you know, he was coughing and clearing his throat, and it wasn't that easy to listen to, you know. So the next night, of course, I was coming every night. The next night, there were fewer people there, about 80 people there. And then it was the same thing, you know, he gave the teaching for a couple of hours, clearing his throat, coughing like that. And then the third night, the final night, there are only 40 people there. So I got very indignant about this. And I went to see him afterwards and I said, you know, these students, they really went to a lot of trouble to, I mean, I didn't say it quite like this, but this is kind of what I was really saying. So these students, they worked so hard and they put, you know, they spent all this time and money and effort in putting together this beautiful teaching and everything. And then you come in and you're just clearing your throat and you're coughing all the time and you're driving the people away. So, you know, what's up with that? I mean, I didn't say it like that, but, you know, that's probably how it came out. I was a little shrill. And he gave me this really scathing look. And he says, do you think I don't know what I'm doing? And I was like, well, no, I can't say that. I can't say that you don't know what you're doing. So I was suitably humbled and slunk away. But I remember it, obviously. I'm telling you the story now. And so, you know, I thought, well, maybe there are people there that shouldn't be there, and this is a way to get rid of the people who aren't there, who are there criticizing him or creating negative karma instead of merit. I don't know. I don't know, whatever the purpose was, but, you know, I never complained again about that. And it was interesting that it could be, you know, a purposely employed technique for some higher purpose that was way beyond my understanding, obviously. So that's manifesting in an ordinary aspect. So that's the kindness of the Buddha to manifest in an ordinary aspect, you know, showing, you know, manifesting as a person with all kinds of ordinary faults and shortcomings and so forth. But with our Guru devotion, we see through all that. And we see that this is really the Buddha, you know, a faultless Buddha without any of these faults, and that this superficial stuff is irrelevant. And they say that even if the teacher is not enlightened, even if the teacher is just an ordinary person, if we look at that person as an enlightened being and make offerings to an enlightened being and prostrate to an enlightened being and follow the instructions of an enlightened being, then we get the merit of doing all those things in relation to an enlightened being. So whether is enlightened or not, if we have that attitude that this is a Buddha and we do these different actions, these devotional actions with that kind of mindset, then we get the benefit of having done those actions as if he were Guru Shakyamuni Buddha himself. So the final verse, extra verse here is, we say this a lot in in the regular morning prayers we do at the center. Magnificent, precious, except there are 3 verses there. Magnificent and precious root Guru, please abide on the lotus seat at my heart. Guide me with your great kindness and grant me the realizations of your holy body, speech, and mind. So we visualize the Guru entering our heart. It says, to do the detailed meditation and visualization of the Guru entering your heart, you need to have received highest Yoga Tantra initiation. Otherwise, it cannot be explained to you. So that concludes the Lam Rim part of this practice. The remaining verses explain how to live your life for other sentient beings. Since you practice the Hinayana teachings, your motivation is that of dedicating your life to others, so as to free them from suffering and enable them to achieve the peerless happiness of enlightenment, as well as every other happiness. Okay, so that's finished there now. And we'll go through the rest of the text next Monday. Next Monday is going to be the 5th and final session of this series. Okay. Any questions?
I had a question, Nick, but I'll save it until next time because it's, I think since we're out of time, but I'll just mental bookmark it.
Yeah, or you can email me. We can discuss it if you like. nick@lamayeshi.com.
Okay.
Either way.
Thank you.
So we generated bodhicitta at the beginning. We've been, discussing Lama Zopa Rinpoche's daily practice. So we've created huge amount of merit. So before that gets destroyed by anger, wrong views, and so forth, then we should dedicate it. So I think, because of this merit, now I quickly become a Buddha in order to enlighten all sentient beings. Okay, guys. Thank you very much.